Story recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a drama, horror, mystery, science fiction, and thriller film called Radius. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Awoken by a car crash, a man, Liam, finds himself in the middle of nowhere. He makes his way to the road, where he tries flagging down a passing car. Liam almost gets hit by the car before it swerves off the road. He approaches the car door and sees the driver lifeless with white eyes. Liam uses the woman's phone to call for help, and the officer asks for his name and location. He realizes that he doesn't know his name. Luckily, he still has his wallet and learns his name and address. A crow flies above him and the bird dies for unknown reasons, making Liam more confused. He makes his way back to town and stops at a local diner. Oddly, he finds everyone inside dead with white eyes. Just outside, a van crashes into the diner because the driver suddenly died as well. Because of this weird phenomenon, Liam speculates that a virus is responsible for it and covers his mouth and nose with a cloth. He finds his way back to his house with a map, where he watches news reports about the mysterious occurrence. Not long after, he spots a farmer just outside the house who greets him. Liam warns the man to leave the area and go back home, but he continues to come closer, causing him to die. This surprises Liam, wondering why he remains unaffected. He tries writing down everything he remembers to figure out the mystery. He then asks himself if he could be the one responsible for all the deaths. To test his theory, he goes outside and approaches a crow. As he comes closer, the crow drops dead, confirming his theory. He then measures how far something has to be before getting affected. Later that day, cops arrive at his house, informing him that they found his truck, but he refuses to let them know that he is around. Because of the lack of response, an officer decides to enter the house, and the other checks the surrounding areas. To spare their lives, Liam stays at a safe distance from them and hides. After birds start falling from the sky, the officer notices that the animals' eyes turn white as well, just like the people in the diner, so both of them retreat to the station. That night, Liam awakens from a dream of him crashing the car. A woman, dubbed as Jane Doe, arrives at his property, asking to talk to him. He warns her not to get any closer to the shed, but the woman is unaffected, to his surprise. Jane reveals to Liam that they were together during the crash, and she suffers from amnesia like him. Neither of them knows why they were traveling together nor the cause of the crash. Liam welcomes Jane inside his home, where she informs him that she tracked him down because the cops informed her that the car in the crash is registered to Liam. When Liam looks at Jane, he gets random visions of them being together before the accident in a place called Smithburg Oakdale Bridge, so they check its location on the map. Curious to know what happened, they drive to the last place they remember, but they fail to remember anything. Despite forgetting everything about the past, Liam tells Jane that he feels like he knows her deeper. Jane gets a vision of her sitting by the bridge with Liam comforting her, but that is the most she can extract from her memory, leaving her frustrated. After some time, they decide to go to the crash site to investigate. When they arrive, they find a charred circle with its edges perfectly lined. Liam and Jane remember fragments of where they last stood before ultimately losing their memory of that rainy night. Liam is now heavily consumed by his troubled mind, so he tells Jane all about the deaths that he is unintentionally responsible for. Jane gets scared and quickly distances herself from Liam. She gets mad at him for not informing her, saying that she could have been harmed. When they reach the road, a cop stops by after seeing them arguing and questions Liam as Jane walks farther away. Expectedly, the cop drops dead. Liam notices that the police officer only died when Jane was at a distance and theorizes that Jane's proximity could have a connection to the strange phenomenon. To prove to Jane that she nullifies his ability to kill anyone within a certain radius, Liam uses a goat to explain how it works. In an open field, Liam instructs Jane to take a few steps farther from him, and they wait for the goat to die. As long as Jane is within 50 feet of Liam, Liam's curse doesn't affect any living beings. Initially, Liam wants to inform the authorities about it, but Jane convinces him that they will not believe a single word he says. Instead, she suggests that he should be tested at a hospital. While a doctor checks him up, he gets random visions of himself in the past, but it does not help explain his current situation. They run a scan for him, but the nurse says that Jane could not be inside the room. Both of them beg the nurse to let her stay, and she agrees. They then see a news report that discloses Liam as the prime suspect of the mysterious deaths, so they try to flee from the hospital. Unfortunately, the police are already there. Liam finds the doctor, and the doctor tells him the results of the scan. Apparently, Liam is perfectly healthy. They run from the police, but Jane gets a glimpse of a missing person board on the way to the elevator, making her stop. She gets a vision of standing at the bridge while holding a poster of herself missing. When she snaps out of it, she realizes that Liam already got into a packed elevator. Jane tries to catch up to Liam, but she doesn't make it. Jane uses the stairs to maintain the 50-foot distance to prevent the people inside the elevator from dying. At the same time, Liam urges the people to run as far as they can away from him once the elevator doors open. The elevator stops, and the occupants get out, but Jane and Liam are still apart from each other. Jane misses him on every floor, making her run down using the stairs. Finally, they land on the same floor and embrace each other as the doors open. They leave the hospital relieved that nobody got fatally harmed. They drive to a secluded property deep into the woods as a safe space, away from the rest of the town's citizens, and more importantly, from the police. While in the car, Jane tells Liam that she is still considered missing, with authorities still working on her disappearance. The next day, Liam notices Jane's wedding ring but disregards it and exits the car to check if anyone is around. Meanwhile, Jane listens to the radio and hears a news report revealing her real name, Rose Darwood. Surprised by this, she also learns that she has a husband named Sam, who appeals for her to return home. Although doubts still run through her mind, she thinks that contacting Sam for help will be a great idea, and she relays this information to Liam. Hesitant to leave, he tells Rose that he is staying, but she refuses to let him be alone without her. She finally convinces him after saying that Sam may be the reason for her disappearance and that she needs Liam to keep her safe. They track Sam down using an address directory, and Sam enters the car after Rose's plea. Liam tries explaining, but Sam does not buy his story at first. Liam demonstrates how his deadly radiation works by coming near a bird who dies mysteriously. Now convinced, Sam agrees to be an accomplice and provides a hiding place for them. While he disposes of their car, Rose finds the poster from her vision with the name Lily Grayson. She learns that Lily is her long-lost twin sister and is also missing, which puts Rose in a spiral of depressive episodes. She had spent her time looking for Lily, and on the anniversary of her twin's death, she stormed off to the bridge, prepared to take her own life. Rose then remembers becoming suicidal, and Liam saved her that night. Liam convinced her to get off the ledge and talk the situation out, beginning an unlikely friendship. After her vision, Rose asks Sam for some food, so he heads outside to pick up something for her. Rose then tells Liam about how and where they knew each other, and they fall asleep on the couch. Sam sees this and gets jealous. Sam then warns Rose of Liam being a bad person, but she defends Liam. Meanwhile, Liam gets a vision of the night of the accident and remembers that they intended to travel to a nearby lake. He proposes going to the secluded cabin with Rose to Sam, but Sam does not allow the two of them to go alone and walks out. Sam called the cops without their knowledge, and Liam realizes it after Sam acts frantic and insistent on leaving Liam behind. However, Sam instantly regrets his decision and warns them at the last moment. Shortly after, the cops arrive at their home and arrest Sam for thinking that he is an accomplice. Police enter the house and handcuff Liam and Rose. The two beg the police not to separate them. Disregarding their cries, the police split them up, resulting in everyone around them dying, including bystanders at the scene. Liam falls to the ground, overtaken by the guilt of being responsible for it, but he reunites with Sam and Rose to resume their plan. Finally, Sam agrees to be left behind to explain to authorities the truth behind the deaths. Liam and Rose start to drive away from town and stop for some food. Inside the store, they learn about an unexplained cosmic event on the news with released satellite images of the anomaly. The report was released by NASA, which can still not grasp what happened that could cause such satellite disruptions. They go back to the car and continue to drive when a vehicle starts following them. Finally, Liam and Rose arrive at the secluded cabin. Stressed out, Liam heads outside to take a walk, leaving Rose scouring through the contents of the cabin. While going through stuff, she finds a notebook revealing that Liam is a serial killer and is the one who abducted Lily. As she turns each page, she reads about Liam's victims, stating the details of the murders. To her surprise, she sees her name on a blank page, revealing that Liam intended to kill her when he stopped her from taking her own life. Separately, Liam remembers disposing of Lily's body in the lake and his attempt to kidnap Rose, which troubles him deeply. He feels a sense of confusion because he doesn't remember being a killer. Both of them remember the reason behind the accident. Rose tried to stop Liam from tranquilizing her, causing the car to crash in their scuffle. She managed to crawl out of the car when lightning hits them, and they both get electrocuted. It appears that the strange phenomenon reported earlier in the news from NASA is the same thing that affected them. Now that everything is clear, Rose holds Liam at gunpoint while confronting him, but she could not get herself to shoot him. While making their way back to the cabin, they run into the man who was following them. The man and his two sons hold them captive, dubbing them terrorists. Liam manages to run away but is stopped by gunfire. Intending to use his deadly radiation, Liam takes a few steps back until the father and one of his sons die, while the other beside Rose survives. He also dies after she runs away from him. Unfortunately, Rose gets shot and is fatally wounded, so Liam takes her to the nearest hospital. While she is rolled into the emergency room, she repeatedly calls out to Liam. As Liam disappears from view, Rose sees him aim a gun at his head. She then hears a single gunshot. Despite him being her sister's killer, she feels a deep sense of sadness after hearing the gunshot and cries. Finally, Liam has paid the price for all the crimes he has committed, but not the way he expected. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.